Hey, how's it going, fans? I see we have some people in the channel already waiting for the stream to start. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. My internet dropped. And so if it drops again, you know why. You know what's going on. But we should be good. I think we're good now. So welcome to the Roberson Rebellion. This is a Rebel's Guide to Popular Culture and Gaming. I'm your host, Sean Owen Roberson, a.k.a. Rebel One. And I'd like to invite you to enlist in the Rebellion. Join me every week for live interactive episodes. Subscribe to the channel, destroy the like button, and share it with your friends if you don't mind. So one of the things that I wanted to go over real quick was a question from last week's episode. We had a viewer commenting. We had a lot of comments on last week's episode, so I appreciate everybody's feedback and thoughts. A lot of people talking about the moral choices in their games and how they think that makes for interesting games. I had a question about how James C. asks. He asked to know about why, or no, wait, was that James C? Let's see. Let me double check. Make sure I'm quoting the right person. I thought it was him. Let's see. Oh, he asked. He knows that in some of the new revised editions of the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide, the Game Master's Handbook, the Savage Foes of North America, there was some information that was previous in those books that was shuffled around to some of the new books. There were a couple of things. One of them was like a Techno-Wizardry pistol. Some of the Coalition equipment and profiles were shifted. Some of the art was shifted between the books. And it was just to try and make sure that that some of the themes in the books matched up better with where they were presented so that they were easier to find, especially with the Coalition material. So hopefully that didn't throw anybody off too much, but that was the idea there. Let me see. Oh, let me get that back. Okay, so got a little. Whoop, there we go. Video of the Rogue One trailer, since we're going to be talking about Rogue One tonight. So, again, sound check as usual. I hope you guys can hear me. I hope we've got a good balance this time between a little bit of background music and the volume from my microphone, so my Blue Yeti. So let me know how that goes. Again, as usual, I appreciate you guys. So let's just dive into this review. So as I mentioned in previous episodes, especially when we were talking about The Mandalorian, I think that, if you can't tell, I'm a Star Wars fan, but I think that one of the really important things to remember when you're doing a spin-off of something like big like Star Wars, or any major franchise that has a lot of depth, there's a lot of different themes that are going to be present in them. For instance, Star Wars was inspired by everything from World War II war films, combat films, military films, to action-adventure, swashbuckling. There's also a lot of elements of samurai movies, of your westerns. You have tons of high adventure. A lot of it was based on, or thematically based on folklore. If you've ever read Joseph Campbell. So those are different things that all influenced the original Star Wars. And so one of the big things is when you do a spin-off of that, like with the Mandalorian TV show, which we talked about previously, it's good to focus on some of those themes and kind of hone in on those themes, and then you've got something that feels the same but hits some different notes, so it's its own entity. And you can subdivide these themes even more. You can do it in all types of media, whether it's music. This is a very generally applicable idea. So that is a big part of what someone who I think is considering how they're going to create I hate to use the term derivative, but a derivative work. I think that's a great way to approach it. With Rogue One, instead of being a Western like The Mandalorian is. It does lean in a little bit more towards those morally ambiguous themes like The Mandalorian does, like we talked about last week. But it also is a lot more of a war story. It's mixed between the Dirty Dozen, the Guns of Navarone, if you guys have seen that. So I thought that was a great way to explore Star Wars. I thought this was the first a Star Wars story. As Disney was coming out with these movies, they decided that the new Star Wars movies, they decided they wanted to have a release every year. And they were taking 2 years to build each one of the episodic episode 7, episode 8, 9, 10, right, whatever, stories. So they wanted to get some other releases in there. This one went really well. The following ones didn't. Or the following one, I should say, the Solo, a Star Wars story movie. But this is a really great movie. It grossed over $1 billion worldwide very quickly. And it was the first in these spin-offs for Star Wars. And at first I worried that this was going to be just they're churning something out that didn't really have a soul. But they did a pretty good job with it, in my opinion. There were a few different things that made this a success, both as its own entity and as a Star Wars entity. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. Again, as usual, there's a huge spoiler alert right here. I warned you, don't blame me if you hear something, but I mean, it's been a while, right? Rogue One's been out for quite a while. So first off, again, this is a war film, and one of the things that came up as they were filming this, as they were getting it prepared for audiences, is that early reports say that it was a bit too gritty, and so Disney ended up asking them to do some reshoots for a lot of the scenes, especially towards the end of the film, to make sure that the end product struck the balance between war film and space opera that you need to have to be a successful Star Wars movie. But I really enjoyed the fact that we could get something a little different than the normal swashbuckling episodic movies, and it's always fun to see a little darker side of a galaxy far, far away. One of the things that I was always hoping they would do was a Boba Fett film, and fortunately they ended up doing, and they had announced, they talked about it, but unfortunately they ended up doing The Mandalorian. But I remember when I first watched this, I was really hoping for that. Maybe some of that stuff will come back after time, maybe with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni heading up some of the work. So one of the big things about this film is that the director, Gareth Edwards, was able to really, he and his team were able to really fully realize their vision for the narrative of this movie. I think the most powerful instance or example of that is when you see how the movie ends. I mean, we all know everyone dies. So it's dramatically breathtaking. It's unorthodox for a Star Wars movie, but when they were working on it, at first they thought Disney wouldn't okay that, and they ended up going to Disney and saying, hey, we think that this works best if, and apparently a lot of the actors and people that were reading for it felt the same way. It works best if the characters die in the movie. Again, I brought this up a little bit last week when we were talking about, I think it was last week when we were talking about morally ambiguous choices and riffs and things like that. But sometimes it's okay for a character in a story to die, whether it's a main character, or if you're playing a role-playing game, one of the player characters, or it's something else. It could be another NPC. But this can lead weight and a little more believability and reality to a story. It makes sure that it feels like the story has a lot of real stakes. A lot of real things are at stake. I don't know if maybe a little bit of that, my feeling towards that is because I'm a military veteran, but to me, that's often the true price of freedom or someone devoting their life to a cause, is putting their life on the line or sacrificing their life in service of a greater cause. One of Another thing that was really great about this movie is that it really jumped back to a really interesting time period right before Episode 4: A New Hope, and I think that's still my favorite Star Wars movie. And so the fact that this movie connects right into it pretty seamlessly when you watch it, I really enjoyed that, and it felt very natural as opposed to sometimes things like that can feel kind of stilted, but it didn't in this movie. So some of the fan favorite stuff gets to come back in this movie. You've got the Death Star, Darth Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin, a younger Princess Leia, a bunch of pilots and early rebellion leaders are present in the movie through different types of film trickery and stuff like that. It's great to see the characters in action again. I thought Darth Vader was done extremely well, and we got to have James Earl Jones back for that, so that was awesome. There was some controversy about this movie when they brought back Tarkin and Leia with some technology that it's not really, especially at that time, wasn't quite there yet. I think now, if they were to do more, if you've ever seen the deep fake technology, do that and then clean it up a little bit with special effects. Put some budget into deep fakes. I've seen a bunch online that they're just some guys having fun in a studio or at their house, and it's pretty impressive what people can do. That said, seeing Grand Moff Tarkin, seeing Princess Leia, it was good. I think it was dang close. There was, I remember again, like a lot of furor for some people over that, bringing back actors that way. But I think overall, including these characters was worth the trade-off. That was still there. It was a little bit of a gamble, but I think it was worth it. So the movie was innovative and stuff, but let's go over some of the basics. So the plot and the script. This is where the movie could have really fallen on its face, but it didn't. It stumbled a little bit out of the gate. The early plot for the movie is kind of disjointed. I don't think it's as strong as it could be. Not that I necessarily could write a better movie script, right? But it works, and the movie manages to fit very snugly into the timeline, and it enhances Episode 4 by plugging some plot holes and bringing a little more gravity to the conflict at large, and showing us an earlier stage of the rebellion and a really critical battle that they fought and took some hits. The dialogue is really snappy. I really did enjoy the dialogue, and the characters evolve well enough. This is an action movie again, and we do see them go through some interesting arcs. Although there are times when I remember, some of the characters talking about, "Oh, I'm a rebel" and all this stuff, but I don't know if we saw enough of that early in the movie. There is a part with Saul Guerrero where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna die here," and you're like, "Why? Everybody else is running out. Why can't you just run out with them?" So there are some things that were a little forced, but in general, I think the plot and the script worked really well. Acting, a star-studded cast does not guarantee a good Star Wars movie, and I'm talking about Episodes 1, 2, and 3. That said, the acting in this movie is really great. The protagonists are dynamic, and they are often very troubled by the deterioration of the world around them, which is great. Felicity Jones and Diego Luna were a really good duo. I think they worked out really well in the film, and they created a lot of dramatic tension as uneasy allies that learn to really trust each other. And I think that their characters' relationship was really believable and part of the dynamic that helped sell this movie. James Earl Jones, again, was awesome, an unexpected treat, and Guy Henry resurrected Grand Moff Tarkin very believably. It was so funny if you see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I saw him dressed up as Grand Moff Tarkin, and he was reprising, Peter Cushing, and it was so good. I was like, what, did they really need the 3D, the special effects? I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that clearly, because I thought it was great. I thought he did a great job. Either way, we knew which character it was, and they made the choice to go the way they did, however it was. Cinematography. So some of the cool stuff that I learned about this movie doing a little bit of research was that Gareth Edwards, the director, he used an ancient 70mm Panavision lenses, set of Panavision lenses, and combined them with cutting edge 6K large format cameras. And this gave Rogue One the look and feel of the old school Star Wars movies without sacrificing modern quality. So I thought that was a really neat trick to mix the old lenses with the new film technology, or digital filming technology. The movie looked really great in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX, and at the same time, it was so clear and crystal clear, but it maintained that gritty feeling of war film footage that was maybe hand shot by someone on scene. I really enjoyed that part of that aspect of the movie and its cinematography and presentation. Music and sound. Up until this point, every Star Wars movie had been scored by John Williams until Rogue One. Because of reshoots and scheduled changes, the original composer lined up for the movie, Michael, I hope I'm saying this right, Michael Giacchino, replaced Alexander Desplat a mere 3 months before the movie was released. So that was a really interesting thing when I read about it, because when I came out of this movie, I just thought the score was great. The soundtrack was awesome. Giacchino apparently was a huge Star Wars fan, so big enough that when they were filming The Force Awakens, he actually appeared as a stormtrooper, as an extra stormtrooper. So that was really cool to read, that he was a true fan. And he also had a lot of experience under his belt when he came to this movie, because he had done the score for the Doctor Strange Marvel movie and the score for some of the new Star Trek films, the J.J. Abrams reboot. You wouldn't know it from listening to the soundtrack, but Giacchino finished the Rogue One soundtrack in under 5 weeks. And that's insane. Composers normally have close to a year. And it's nuts to think that he could knock it out that quickly. I thought the score was great. It really fit the tone of the new movie, because there was that correct tone to strike, I really loved it. The sound for this film was really good too, I will say. The sound design. So you can go wrong with a war film. You can go wrong with sci-fi when you try and do sci-fi wars or Star Wars, right? Space Wars, whatever. But when I watched this movie, I felt like the blasters were really punchy. The combat sounds really added some depth. And the vehicles and the starship had really signature acoustics that really blended in with the rest of very classic Star Wars sound effects. And I thought that was just a really great achievement. There's similar artistry on display in the new Mandalorian TV show, but this one was the first one that I ever saw where I was like, wow, someone can really take that, just Star Wars, and just punch it up one step more, while keeping that really gritty feel. So overall, my final verdict, I think that Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, I give it a 9.5 out of 10. I really loved the characters. I thought that Felicity Jones was amazing. Her character was awesome. Diego Luna really kicked some butt. Definitely a 9.5 out of 10 for me. So I think it brought some much needed balance to the Force, and I think that it kind of gave some old school fans like me a new hope when I saw some of the new movies, especially Episode 8, which I'll probably talk about again at some point. Hopefully I'll hit maybe some of the other Star Wars movies and other cool sci-fi or fantasy movies in future episodes. But anyways, with that, I just wanted to kind of take a second to see if anybody had anything they wanted to mention in the chat, any of your thoughts and feelings. What did you guys think? Did y'all enjoy the movie? Because, again, I thought it was great, but I know some of the fans were really divided over the new movies, all of them, including this one. What do you guys think? Any comments? A little bit of a delay on the comments here, so I'll give them a second to type and for the comments to show up for me. I see Venatus Vinco says he watched the movie last night as prep. I wondered if that just happened to be perfect. It's a great movie, it really is. And one of the things I'd say that I'm just gonna wait a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I would say if you like riffs, if you like war movies, this is a great movie to watch. I think this is a fantastic movie, and it really has that right kind of tone. Yeah. So I have a question here. What happened to the Bothans? That's what Vanatas Vinko asks. Well, I believe there was a mention that some of that information was still handed off over, but yeah, they didn't. They obviously didn't take the they didn't really show the Bothans very much in this, right? So anyone who is familiar with the Star Wars expanded universe knows that Bothans are these, I don't know what to call them, like weird cat-like people, but they make, always represented as good spies and stuff, just from that one line in Star Wars A New Hope. So it was interesting to see how they kind of just did a little in run around that in this movie. Let's see, I have a question from John McClymans. How do you think it compares to the original story of how it went down? You mean from, I'm guessing you mean from episode 4. Well, I thought, when I watched this movie, I thought that it really, it fit in, it plugged in really snugly. So that was my impression of this movie, was that it actually really brought some balance, and it smoothed over a couple of the points where you'd say, why, for instance, did the Death Star have this fatal flaw? What was up with that exhaust port, right? That doesn't seem to make any sense. And so there were little things like that. Why didn't the Rebels have any? Where was their fleet, right? Their capital ships. Especially if you watch the later movies, you're like, well, why didn't they have any capital ships before? Well, this movie kind of helps explain things like that. Why are they so on the back foot? And why are they so? Why is the Empire pissed off? Why are they going after the Rebels? There's a lot of things like that get set up this movie that I think really added a lot of dimension to the conflict in the following movies, chronologically, right? I mean, this came out obviously decades later, but I think it really they did a great job of actually creating something that slid right in between episodes 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, right up against 4, and really started things off with a bang, and actually added value to the original trilogy. So that was neat. Yeah, so I have Rob's towel on here as saying that he thinks that it's one of the new movies that he enjoyed. I know. I think I agree. A lot of people didn't seem to enjoy a lot of the new movies, so I thought that was really great to see one of them succeed. And I'll do a review at some point, but when I saw Solo, it was just, it was painful, because there were a lot of cool ideas, there were a lot of great production values. Obviously, a lot of talented people are involved, but that movie really didn't pull it off very well. And it was also very hamstrung by the performance and kind of shock value that I think went the wrong way with the fandom. The fans of the hardcore Star Wars fans. Episode 8 really just kind of went the wrong way. So, well, I don't know if anybody else has any real quick questions, but hey, I really appreciate everybody joining me tonight. I wanted to kind of go over this movie because I think that there's a lot of stuff that can be learned again from it. As I've mentioned before, there's a lot of really great themes, but it has a big cast of characters. It's set in a big war. The backdrop is a really big war, really gritty combat and stuff. And I think that it could really help out to a lot of people, a lot of that like riffs or just like storytelling, if they're trying to write their own stories or create their own role-playing games or campaigns. I think this is a great movie to watch, whether you need to be inspired for something like that or just for fun. But anyways, thanks again for everyone joining me. If you have some comments, let me know. I know a lot of y'all can't necessarily catch the show live, and that's totally cool. Please go ahead and ask some questions down below. I'll pick out at least one of them to try and answer at the beginning of each episode. But I appreciate everyone's comments on the last episode, and I will look at answering some of those. I think there were some really great questions and comments that I will look at exploring in future episodes, maybe as a full-fledged episode. So again, I appreciate that, and I think that again, I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff going on here. So again, I appreciate everyone's being active participants in the channel, and I think that it's been my pleasure to have such really great friends and fans joining me every week for this adventure. Hey, Crazel, good to see you. Good to see you, Sean. It's a good old friend of mine, good buddy of mine. Yeah, thanks. He's jumping in at the very end in the chat, and he says he'll catch it in replay. Again, thanks everybody for joining in live. Thanks everybody that joins later on. Please leave me your thoughts. What did you think about the movie? Did you think it was good, bad? What was good or bad? Have you ever had a story idea inspired by this movie, or even just the props and the aesthetics? Let me know in the comments, and yeah, I'll check you guys later. Have a good one.